want to pick up on something that Rob said about like the Christian foundations, you know, love your neighbor, all of those kind of things. And it reminds me of a video that I'd actually love to show you guys.
Okay.
And it's this guy talking about, I don't know if it was a conference or an interview, but essentially they had a Christian person, a Muslim person, and a Jewish person, and they were just asking them, okay, how do we basically create a great society? And so he's just talking about
Sure.
that.
So the topic of this particular panel was what creates a good society. And so Andy was the Christian representative, and you had a Muslim and you had an atheist. And what was just glaring about the situation is basically the atheist and the Muslim said, we need to make more rules and make sure people obey them. Right? It's like secular materialistic rules or Sharia rules. And Andy Bannister was brilliant in that he said, we're never going to make enough rules that people aren't going to try to find the loopholes or just do it because they don't want to get in trouble. The only way to create a good society is to change people's hearts.
That's right.
And the only way to do that is Jesus. And it was so radically different than the other two perspectives that you could see that they didn't know what to do with it. Because they were like, well, yeah, but maybe if we just make people do better. And you're like, it's not going to work. That's right. And that's where the solution is to love God and love people.
That's right.
Hey.
Awesome. Yeah.
That is so good.
That's fantastic. It's so funny because we were talking to Andy Bannister last week, so we interviewed him on these things. It reminds me of that time, I think it was C.S. Lewis was in a public debate. I think it was a bishop in the Church of England. This is quite a long time ago. The bishop started it off by saying that all the problems in British society of the day were all problems on the outside. You know, like this establishment wasn't right. These working conditions weren't right. This had to be sorted out in government. This had to be sorted out there. And then after he had spoken for some time, Lewis just stood up and said, I'm very sorry, I have to disagree. The problems of the world aren't primarily on the outside, they're actually on the inside. It's the human heart is like the heart of the problems. Yeah. And in Jesus, trusting in him, we can be born again and changed on the inside. Yeah. So the life that we live and all the affections and things that we love and chase after, all those things are changed and we become new people. Yeah. So you're that's such an amazing thing. And I love Andy Bannister. He's fantastic, isn't he?
No,
it was great to speak to him last week, wasn't it, Rob? What a great guy he is.
I was so interested in that idea of what we need is rules. Because if you look at the story of the Bible, it starts off with one rule. Don't eat the fruit. Really simple. One rule. That didn't go so well. And so then you have the sort of the first covenant, you have the agreement with Noah, and you've got a few rules. Then we get the 10 Commandments, really famous. 10 rules. Still doesn't go great, immediately broken. And then we have this sort of development of the Jewish law as God reveals more of how he wants people to live. And by the time you get to Jesus, you have the famous 613 rules. And there were loads more built off the top of the back of that. People would
list them all.
No, don't make me try. But the funny thing is people were arguing about it. So they asked Jesus, what is the great commandment? It's love God and love your neighbor. And
please, can we go back to less rules?
Yeah. Because you've completely lost it. You're so obsessed with the rules, you've forgotten about the game.
Exactly.
And it's that idea of actually, what is this about? It's about loving God and loving your neighbor. And if you do those things, if society is based on that idea of loving God in the sense that there is a judgment coming, there is somebody who will one day know all the things that I've done and ask me an account of that. And I have a responsibility to love those around me, even if I disagree with them.
Yeah.
If society runs like that, it's running on Christian values, and it'll work.
Yeah. And I think even deep down in the in the judicial system, when they look at someone who's murdered someone, they're like, okay, but did they intend to? What was their heart saying, or was it intentional? Do you know what I mean? It's not just about the act. Like you were saying, they were saying these things are all bad, but they're all external things. But everyone knows the external things stem from somewhere internal. So it's if I hit you in the face, but it was an accident, you're just okay, you know what? Ouch, but no harm, no foul. So I just decked you, you're fired. So it's all about what goes on in the heart.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's amazing. In the 16th century, one of the great reformers, a guy called John Calvin, there was people knocking around at that time, and what they were saying was, oh, you don't need the Bible, right? You don't need all of these things. All you need is just simply to love God and love each other. John Calvin was very wise, right? Because his response was, you think that's easier?
Yeah.
So what he was saying was, that seems very simple, but that is the hardest thing of all. And once you do that, everything else flows from that.
Yeah.
But the only way that's possible is if we are changed on the inside.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing, is that that's what Jesus is able to do. So all these sort of external changes, they have their place and there may be some sort of limited value. But deep down, what we all need is to become new people, to be born again on the inside. And Jesus can do that. Like, he's done that for me. He's done that for so many other people. And then that change starts on the inside and it works out right across society. So societies are changed by ordinary people like us who meet Jesus, become new people, and then do wonderful things for him.
Yeah, like I've heard so many people's stories where they say like, I wasn't ready to tell my family that I was a Christian. But they were like, you seem different. Like, you used to be such a word I won't use. And now you're much kinder. Like, you spend time with us. Yeah. And then they're like, why? Yeah. And then it's Jesus. Like, Jesus literally transforms people.
Isn't that awesome? And I heard a story recently of a man who was a Muslim background, and then he had a dream. And he had like a vision dream, and he just described it as seeing the most beautiful man that he had ever seen, and he didn't know who it was. So he went to his religious teacher and said to him, what is this? Interpret it for me. And his religious teacher said to him, don't listen to that. That's from the devil and is evil. Now, he found his way into a church and he realized that guy that he saw is Jesus, who is the Son of God, the Lord of all. And he was changed and became like a new person on the inside. And then his wife was very upset with him, because he'd become a Christian. And then his response to her was, what would you prefer? Do you want me to go back to be the man that I used to be when I used to treat you very badly and our family very badly? Or the man that I've now become through trusting and knowing Jesus? And then she said, I'll take the man that you've become. I'll go with that one. And that's open to us all, isn't it? That's the amazing thing. So it's such a fantastic thing. Yeah, we need that change deep down on the inside. Outside, we can deal with that later on. Let's have that change on the inside, and then everything else starts to fall into place.